perhaps you mentioned this, but I just would like to ask again. So from the theist rational framework that you put forth, is your God therefore limitless, or does he have a limit? And from that, I'd like to ask another question. Okay, so if he is limitless, because that's what in philosophy God is defined as being limitless by Descartes or whatever. So if he's limitless, and going by your argument of pizza and the moon, then he can't possibly fit. So therefore, either everything that exists must be a part of God, if you're still sticking to the argument that God is limitless, then if God is not a separate entity, how does that make any sense?
Okay, any more questions? Any for the atheist side?
His attempt of refuting the concept of the first creator and who would have created the first creator. This is an argument which goes back to the simple basis of refuting the concept of infinity, the fact that nothing can be forever, and it has to have a creator or a starting point which is external to it. Because if you say that, and it rationally makes sense, because if you say that you had a domino which has been falling for an infinity amount of steps, and it's just been always falling forever, the fact that this is falling is itself an evidence of the first, and you can't say it was another domino, because then you can say you pushed the domino before the first domino. So the simple concept is that infinity in itself doesn't make sense, not who came before it and then who came before it.
Any more questions? You start back.
Hi there. The original question posed was, of course, is there a rational proof of God? Now the theist side, if I can call them that, have provided a proof of God. And I was just wondering if they could clarify, stress how they think it's a rational proof of God. To me it seems that it breaks down on two counts. It breaks down initially for the reason that has already been stressed a number of times, that it begins on terms that it goes on to contradict. By that I mean it begins by saying that everything around us is limited, then explains that to something that is by definition unlimited, and it goes on to fail but on the grounds that it was stated by, sorry I've forgotten the name, speaker of the lecture, that you would rather go with this irrational, in my opinion, irrational proof. I was just wondering if you could clarify those points.
I think the question was thank you for your question. If I understood it correctly, and correct me please if I haven't got it wrong, because I don't want to answer the wrong question here. You asked about whether my conception of what created this reality is limitless or limited. That was the first part of the question. And then, based upon that, you asked a follow-up. Right? That was the question, yeah?
Whether your rationally proved God is limitless or if he has.
Okay, but remember, our formulation is that this reality, the inherent limitations of this reality necessitate a creator. And the domino example given by another audience member in the second question, that simply adds to the argument we're making, that this reality is full of limited things, and that whatever created or caused, or whatever you want to call it, whatever initiated this, cannot also be a domino. That's the point. Cannot also be the same thing, bound by the same laws, bound by the same conditions as what was begun and created.
It's a simple question, is he limitless or does he have a limit?
But here's an important thing to say here. As soon as we establish that it's different to this reality, and then we can use the phrase limitless if you wanted to, then the question is about what does it mean rationally for us to be able to understand. Can we say things like, can this creator create a stoic carpet? As an example. And then we can start all of these questions because we say, well, it's limitless. But the problem here, and it's very important that I emphasize this, we cannot think from the experience of this reality and extend it out. We cannot even assume that the very idea of up, down, left, right, of, shall we say, time, of creation, of gravity, of any of the constraints of this reality apply outside. To argue who created the creator, as a previous point was made, is to assume that creation exists outside of this reality. What we're saying, therefore, is that this reality is limited, this reality necessitates a creator, that creator cannot be bound by the limitations of this reality, and after a certain point, all you can say is limitless, but without going into too much detail on what that means.
I think that's but then you can use the same exact argument about not being able to, what is physical, then you have to consider outside of space-time as well. Because you're talking about the creation of space-time, and what about the creation of the void? Because the void is still, we don't understand it, but it's still something.
If I understand your question right, what you're saying is that space-time began, right? Space-time began, so whatever caused space-time, because everything in this reality had a beginning and was caused, so whatever caused it is outside of space-time. I think you and I agree.
Can I just say that space-time did not begin in space-time?
Of course, but the point here we're making is that whatever created us cannot be bound by space-time. What we're saying is that the limitations of this reality cannot bind the thing that created it. If you believe that gravity was begun by yourself, if you began gravity, if you're able to form an area where you say there's gravity, that's there, does it necessitate that you must therefore be bound by it? The question here we're saying is that whatever created this reality created the conditions and isn't bound by them.
About time.
So if you're saying that space and time bind the thing that made space and time, is that your condition? Is that your
Does
is
your
that your
God
assertion?
feel time before the creation?
So say that again?
Would he feel time before he created?
Okay, 2 points. First, is that a rational question? Do you have any sensation? Is there any memory? Would you like an apple? I'm coming for it. That question has no reality. Remember, the debate tonight is about what is the rational. Is there a rational proof? Not a philosophical proof, in which case, if it was a philosophical proof, I would have seen Derek coming out of rag. Philosophical, forget it. I'm not coming near philosophy against Derek. No way.
I rationally feel
But
time.
rationally, what is rational? What is rational? We have to have some experience, some memory. And the idea that there could be no time, and the thing that made it might be bound by the time, this isn't rational. This is going to get you section. It's going to get you locked up. We can't go into that. All we can do is say that from our experience, this reality was created. This bottle didn't bring itself into existence. Neither this mic, neither did anything that you can sense. Nothing that you can sense. Nothing made itself. Everything had a beginning, rationally. And every single thing you can sense in this reality is limited, not unlimited. Remember the pizza? And so, if it has limitations, didn't bring itself into existence, had a beginning, then I say it is created. I call a spade a spade.
Thank you very much. I always feel I don't really have to speak, which is rather good, because I'm doing it on my behalf. Just two things. Firstly, in a way, this just kind of reiterates the 2 points that were made both there and at the back. I mean, these might sound like trivial points, but they bear on the larger issue, which I'll get to in a moment, which is God is limitless, but he's limitless in a way that doesn't interfere with him. So unlimited pizza would get in our way of looking at the moon, but an unlimited God doesn't. You sort of think, well, I kind of know what, I don't really know what limitless is obviously just defined negatively, because you define transcendental objects negatively. But I don't really have a graph, it just means not limited. Not limited in a way that doesn't interfere with anything. And you sort of think, oh God, your head, you just think, why? What? It's very difficult to think coherently in these terms, because these terms don't have their usual place of application. But to go back to the question at the front, the gentleman said that if you say God caused the universe and the question is who caused God, I know that some people put it that way. I don't put it that way, because I think the argument trips up before then in the way that the questioners have been suggesting. So let's take the dominoes. So sorry, again, this is going to be rather dull for you, because it's kind of reiterating the same point, but the reason we think that there's a first cause of the domino is that domino n plus 10 was knocked over by domino n plus 9. So we get the idea there that if there's a falling domino, it's got to be knocked over by something. Okay? And we go back to the first domino and we say, as the previous speaker said, you look around you, these things didn't cause themselves, these things were caused, etc. So we go to the first domino and say, right, now it has to have a cause in the same way as the 10th domino had a cause, because this is the analogy. It's the 9th domino and the 10th domino that we're operating in our minds, the concrete reality. So what happens to the first domino? Well, the answer is absolutely nothing like the 9th and 10th domino, I can tell you that for starters. You say, well, what is it like then? Well, we can't, I'm trying to remember the phrase you used, we can't go into the meaning too much, or something. You think, well, that's because there's no, it's not that the explanation is false, or that there's the explanation is redundant because you have to ask the question. It's just that there's not an explanation. You've got an analogy, you're applying the analogy in a place where the argument itself admits it doesn't apply, and it doesn't apply, and then something else comes in from left field. You know? Oh, so in that case it's a limitless, omnibenevolent, omnipotent. You think, what? So completely unlike the 9th domino.
So
And you kind of get lost.
You said infinite regression is true.
The good thing about I'm not making any existence claims, so I don't have to have a positive view, and I don't even have to say that my opponent's view is incorrect. All I'm just trying to say is that their argument gives us no grounds to understand it, because it both is and isn't like a cause.
I don't know.
Sorry?
Neither does I don't know.
No, I'm not saying. I'm told, my father does this kind of thing, I'm told that, and the gentleman up there I'm sure will know much more about this than I do, that space and time came into existence with the Big Bang. So in a way, we're not at the end of eternity, we're at the end of some finite length of time. I can't quite remember how long it is now. Now, it seems to me that in the position, you say to these people, well, how can the universe be expanding? What's it expanding into? And they say, well, it's like blowing up a balloon. It's a two-dimensional surface, these things are kind of moving. And if you can get, I think in that position, it's the duty of any honourable person to say they don't know. Because those explanations are just so confusing. I'm sure there are experts who do understand it, but I'm not an expert.
Yeah. Just while you were speaking, something came to my head. You were saying at the beginning, there was some confusion, maybe we can't go into it, all of these things, and I can see that doesn't sit well with you. But what I can say, and what we came to the conclusion by through rational thinking, is that there must be something at this beginning, right? There must be a cause to start this chain of events. Otherwise, we'd have to agree, or otherwise we'd have to assume that infinite regression takes place, i.e. there is an infinite number of dominoes continuing backwards for infinity. Yeah? So we already come to the conclusion infinity doesn't actually exist. So if we say infinity doesn't exist, there must be a start. There must be a first domino. And there must be something which started this first domino. Yeah? Now what do we know about the thing which started this first domino? We can only come to an answer about these things through rational thinking, i.e. through what we can sense. So we must all agree through that the first thing must be unlimited, because everything after it is limited. So for it to not fall into the same chain of infinite regression, it must, through rational thinking, we must understand that this first thing must be inherently unlimited. Yeah, so that's one thing about it. So when we say that we can't really go into it, we're not saying that we can't go into what some of the components of this first cause must be. What we're saying is that anything, whatever we come to about its conclusion must be rational, must be from the previous experiences we have. And the first thing we've come to a conclusion on, without going to a speech, sorry, is that it must be unlimited.